The Crooked Epic. 1. Inn. 1. The Inn of Maniacal Madness. 2. Ted. The Graveyard. 2A. 1. The last bell rang in the schoolyard, echoing against everyone's eardrums as Ted sat at his station desk and behind all the children who rushed out the doors, flying in the wind of moving life, the pure aura of a bright, shining inevitability blue. Ted's classmates Benjamin and Darren both had agreed to meet up with them in the next couple of weeks. The invitations given out by Alex to go fishing together at Horace Lake were excitedly accepted. Ted personally thought Alex wanted to enhance his reputation as a community leader and a social organizer of younger kids into the world of adulthood. May they later remember him with fondness and admiration as they grew older. Also, he imaginatively gathered his notion of their mission to find the peculiar black dog behind the house as its obligatory secondary reasoning behind the recruitment of the two, yet held no quibble to nor drew offense from it. Meanwhile, this once faint scent of a trail that their hunt for purpose drew from contained their promise of an ultimate reward greater than the past hinted. Their father would drive them to school every morning on his way to work, yet the walk home from where the school hack let them off in Weir testified to the pledge of guardianship which the older brother had undertaken, guidance that built trust and responsibility by their father. The father allowed the leadership of Alex to fortify the bond of siblings on travel between school and home. Like hummingbirds chasing the sensational fragrances of their vitality, they sprung through the woods together. Father would not reach the doorstep until a while later, sometimes as late as 6 o'clock, just in time for dinner or afterward. Sometimes they would hear him toiling with tools in the barn and shed before he would come inside to join the rest of them, and at which point Alex and Ted were sure to steady their demeanors, complete all the house chores, tidy up and clean, and overview the homework assignments as necessary. Nevertheless, it was far from unusual for even subtle peculiarities that were noticeable on the outtake of their walk to gain momentum until becoming an absolute abnormality in the timeline. The walks transition from mundane to extreme and spontaneous. For example, an idea might pop into Alex's head about how crawfish could be caught on the way home on Friday, and it would be a race to change clothes before their father arrived. Or, in some instances, Ted would have the undeterrable urge to visit the nearby library, which would add extra miles to their walk. They had made it all year, though, without being caught by their carekeepers for not following their commands. Nor had they gotten lost from one another or quarreled, argued, nor even been so unruly as a pair to cause unflattering attractions from any person on the path as to be conspicuous or troublesome. This was good because the misadventures and sidetracks were a welcome and playful distraction for them from the rigid requirements of the school and the mild strictness of the house where they lived every day with their proud father. Overall, the father was acutely observant of the professionals, proletariats, peacemakers in the protection of the citizens of miles and miles of neighborhoods and residencies, businesses, and the whole county's industry. So it would be a significant failure for his children to disrupt the delicately balanced diplomacy which was kept as a barrier between them and society in general. They were not angels, Alex nor Ted, yet they never fell from graces together. That afternoon, in the heat of the first of summer semester, the boys were busy in their heads thinking of the search ahead, the moves that they would each make, and the conversation awaiting once they had put forth their plans. As a jigsaw, puzzle placements were being designed. They quietly watched each other to see when any interruption could be made, the motion of suggestion could be created, and the bigger picture formulated. The igniting light of brilliance in Alex's eyes as he turned up the road to their house echoed Ted's self-claimed theories. Excitement stormed their movements more turbulently as they closed in on the perimeter of the fence along with their property, all building to the climax of the sight of Al opening to a running gate directly at the door of the front house. Ted felt torn between the soft, cooling shade and solitude of the barn loft, the fervent excitement of the hot days ahead, impeccable hunger for a slower pace of pleasant relaxation, and satisfying thirst to follow his brother to the grit of the mutual home where would surely be headquarters and center to the juvenile exploit. Within the door of the house, though, as Ted threw off and emptied his backpack in the front room where he and Alex's school study desks were kept on opposite ends of a window, Ted heard the familiar voices of their fathers confronting of Alex in the middle dining room right behind the stairway wall which led to the bedrooms on the second level. Hanging on to the plans which had stimulated his brain, Ted could hear in Alex's tone that the long conversation was not an emergency, so he disappointedly began resupplying his backpack with the notebooks and writing utensils which he considered for an afternoon of studying and drawing either upstairs in his room or the barn. Although relieved to be home, Ted nonetheless was confronted with momentary confusion. He walked to the dining room after he packed a few items and resources for a secluded meditation away from the customary after-school activities. Alex intentionally brushed Ted's shoulder, walking out and spinning up the stairs. Alex gazed down at him for a moment and stopped to stand up on the steps to watch what his reaction was going to be. Father was leaning with one hand on the dining room table, watching the entryway as Alex exited, and Ted's eyes met his when he forced a weak smile. "I decided to come home early and give you both a welcome after your last day." Ted looked back to Alex, whose focused facial expression he might have expected to have been glaring, yet was instead blank and more anxious to get ready to go outside and find his plans for the day. Alex turned back around and continued up the stairs to his room. "All right," began Ted's reply, ready to tell his father what school had been like that day, what he would expect of grades that year, and even some of his aspirations to reflect his integrity throughout the following weeks as a studious and proud member of the family. Ted's expectations were foiled again, though, as his father forced instructive yet strained and oddly distracted monologues that summarized his obvious moral duties as an official of the community. Ted realized, with some scrutiny, his extreme distress about something he was involved in. "Tonight, for dinner, I want to take you to Peterborough for a movie. How does this sound?" This turn of events made Ted ecstatic. Alex had been giving him a classic older brother poker face, and Ted was overwhelmed, shouting, "Oh boy, that's so grand. Go west." Alex, of course, heard Ted from upstairs and let out his joyous laughter from his bedroom. Buster Keaton's Go West was playing that week, which Ted had known all about because of the endless stories circulated in the classroom from the encore showing the week before. It was a common break for the children from the constant talk about the New York Yankees, Lou Gehrig, and Babe Ruth. Alex had not seen it, and neither had he, so it was sure this would be the top choice, which Alex's giddy laughter had indeed confirmed. When Ted ran up to his room, he saw Alex's door was ajar and could not help raising his voice to catch his attention. "Did Dad tell you too, Al?" "Yeah, pretty sweet, huh? Go west, finally. Going, gone." They both laughed uproariously. Alex was so fast at gaining friends, but was still somehow not intimidating to Ted. It helped Ted retain the ability to, at times, to feel more competent or at least as intelligent. Yet assessing his resourceful wisdom and intellect was indeed a model of citizenship for Ted at times. The entire hot drive to Peterborough, Ted studied the densely wooded terrain and highway signs, south through New Boston and into Mount Vernon, where Father made his fastidious remarks about the post office sign, which had misspelled the city's name. If they had wanted it officially named the same as President George Washington's historic Mount Vernon, they would have confused people. At the Milford Oval, where they made their turn westward, the traffic was heavy, and as they jammed through from Nashua Street, they saw the Union Square was filled with crowded storefronts, children, and young people. As Temple Mountain rose and fell in the horizons, the violet skies above turned red, and they entered Peterborough under dim twilight skies of Wednesday, May 18th. They ate at a small restaurant down the street from the theater. Each had a delicious sandwich, clam chowder, and lobster rolls, and Alex and Ted had soda bottles. They both chose candies in the concession stands and enjoyed the film giddily. For most of the ride home, while the road's darkness was pierced only ahead by cars' lights, Ted slept dreamlessly until they re-entered Weir. On the outset, they discussed the movie at length. They traded favorite parts from the cinema and laughed together at the silent film style portrayed by Buster Keaton. As he awoke to the gravel road becoming rougher under the tire treads, he felt the easing level of the proximity to home from the pacing of the vehicle under the control of Father's steering. The anticipation hung in the space between them, the air of their lungs slowing into the culling of sleep. The sounds of crickets and lowered static hum of the falling night around them grew thick, and he felt them slow down into the turn up the driveway.